Hello viewers, here is a Holmes box VN from the 90s. This is the Holmes model. I'm not sure if the model number is known on this or not. It does not appear to be. Okay. Now the model is unknown. I will try to find what it is. I think I have it on record somewhere. I'll post it into that video box that nobody reads, so I'm not sure what the posting is, but maybe somebody will read it this time. Anyways, this is a major childhood fan. I had been looking for one of these for many years, and then it finally showed up. I forget exactly where this came from. I know I had to ship it in from somewhere. I can't remember where at the moment. Anyways, it's really kind of a terrible fan. As was kind of discussed in previous recent videos, these fans were really as cheap as the box fans ever should have gotten. They cut a lot of corners with this model. You know, they had the handle was not a separate piece of plastic, which, what did it save them, a couple of cents, if that, to not put the handle on there. And the handle is just part of the guard, and the handle is awful because it angles upwards, so you go to pick it up and naturally your hand just slides right out, so you almost have to kind of hold it like this. One of the slats is broke there. It was thin enough that they put the feet on here, and they were kind of like permanently attached, I think, and so those of course have broke off with time. It did still have the holes for the stand, and it did still utilize the shaded pole motor. The motor, it does have all ports, but it's kind of like it was assembled upside down because the ports are facing down, and yes, the blade is horrifically out of balance. The ports are facing down, you know, and I'm pretty sure the motor says top with an arrow, and that's also facing down, so I don't know what the deal is with that. I don't know if this is a Raider motor or a Macmillan motor. It kind of looks like a Macmillan to me, but I don't know. I'm sure Tori can tell me. He knows a lot about the different makes and stuff that was used over the years. This unit's in pretty rough shape. The guard is missing a whole bunch of slats. It's cracked at the bottom. I forget who sent this in. It's terrible. I really should remember. I could look it up and find out. I don't know if they want to be publicized or not, but a viewer had written in some time ago, and they offered to send a replacement guard and blades, which they sent. The blade is already at the other location, so I can't show that, but I do have the guards here. There's something very odd about these guards, and you'll notice here on the fan, the front guard is heavily yellowed and you can just hear the brittle sound to it. It's very brittle. And then the back guard doesn't have that same brittle sound to it, and it's flimsy, but it's not brittle yet. It's fine. So I thought that was not super odd, because it's very possible that the fan just sat in a window facing outwards for a substantial period of time. But then I received the replacement guards, and I noticed that they have the same trend, where the front guard is completely yellowed and brittle, and then the rear guard is fine. So it's almost as if like they use different kinds of plastic to comprise the two guards, which is odd. I don't know why you would do that. It's not inconceivable, but it's definitely odd. This guard, unfortunately, is almost just as yellow, but at least it's in better condition. A lot of the slats aren't broken yet, and the ones that are broken are only broke halfway, so they're easily repaired. So when I clean this up, I will change out the guard, and I'll use this front guard. The back guard, I guess I'll put the back guard on too, because I think one of the slats towards the handle is broke, and this one does not appear to have any slats that are broke, although this isn't looking too good up at the top. So I'll have to compare the two and see which one is more cosmetically pleasing out of the two, and then I'll use that one. The switches on the front on this model, which, you know, is okay at first sight, but then if you ever use the thing in a window, directing air out of the window, you can't easily turn it on or change the speeds. So it's really superior to have it on the top if you're going to use it in a window. There's a lot of debate about these blade sets. A very similar shape was used on some of the Edison Fiens, and it's really a terrible blade. The aerodynamics are awful, and the manufacturing process I don't think was much better because they're very consistently out of balance. I haven't checked the cent blade yet for balance, but from what I've been hearing, these are all just horrifically out of balance. So the other one is probably bad too. So I think I'm just going to have to balance it, whichever one I decide to use. But this one is so out of balance, it's ridiculous. I don't know if Holmes ever advertised this on the packaging, but some of the Edison box fans that had this blade set had advertising on the box that said, oh, the blade is computer designed or something. And I don't know what computer program they were using, but it wasn't very good, because these blades make really no aerodynamic sense. It'll be hard to see with the guard on, but the scoop of the blade is almost like inverted. It just doesn't make any sense. And this came up in conversation kind of recently, and I want to do an experiment with this. I almost think that this blade would offer better performance if it was run in reverse. You can kind of see here, but it's like the scoop is opposite to the way that it rotates. You know, looking at it from the back, it seems like it would move more air in running the other way. So what I want to do someday, hopefully soon, maybe when I clean and service this thing, I will assemble the motor backwards, which no, does not cause the motor to have a shorter lifespan, and I will put the blade back on and see if it runs any better in reverse. I definitely would have some concerns about the blade coming forward and hitting the guard, because there's not a lot of space in these fans. This one is just about as bad as the Lakewood I showed a few weeks ago. In fact, I think it's worse. The blade does not have more than a millimeter of clearance in between the guard. It's really ridiculous. The cabinet was just it's too thin on this unit. The blade barely fits in the stinking cabinet. So anyways, this was a major childhood fan in 5th grade. I remember it was 5th grade because I had gone to a different school after elementary school, and in the 5th grade classroom there was one of these box fans, and this school did not have air conditioning everywhere. There was some wall units in the rooms. Some of them, the room that I was in, the air conditioner happened to not work, and so the fan got used pretty extensively. This was also the same classroom that had the Hampton Bay Fetters manufactured white air conditioner. I think it was a bigger one than the one that I have. I think it was probably a 10,000 or a 12,000, but it was the same series. And it was kind of stupid because I think the unit did actually quit working at some point and had to get repaired, but half the time when the instructor would turn it on, they would switch it on to fan and not cool. It's like, you knew how to use an air conditioner? Oh, and that was, well, anyways, that's a different story. So that was that. Also, in the same classroom existed for a short period of time the General Electric brown 2-speed box fan with the metal cabinet and the 5-wing blades. And that fan, I was really fascinated by that fan because it was getting unusual. It wasn't unheard of, but it was getting unusual to see fans that old. Because even in the 2000s, a lot of the older fans from that time period were getting tossed. Because you got to remember, those came out in the 70s and the late 60s. So even by the 2000s, those were 30 plus years old. And so, especially with these things coming onto the market and being so inexpensive, these were starting to become very common. And they were replacing a lot of the older units. So I was very intrigued to see that thing. And in fact, I remember cleaning it one day. And that was an interesting experience. Anyways, so let's go ahead and get this thing set up to run. Hopefully the blade doesn't just fly apart from being so poorly out of balance. Oh no, the plug is damaged. Okay, it's fixed. It is a polarized plug, but it's too early to be fused. I don't know exactly how old this was. I would say somewhere like 96, 97, somewhere in that range. So even this is getting relatively old. Okay, it's plugged in now, and the voltage today is 120.7. And this does not have an information tag anywhere that I can see. So I don't know with absolute certainty what it's rated for, but if I had to take a guess, I would say it's probably rated for 2.1 amps. If it goes forward, the blade is pretty much touching the guard. That is unbelievable. Okay, so I think we're ready to turn this on now. We'll start it up on the low. Are the bearings locked up? No, they're not. I guess it just runs very slowly. Okay. You know, I have to say this is better than I remember it. It's actually moving an acceptable amount of air. Turn this other fan off. Okay. It's actually not that bad. It's moving an acceptable amount of air, and it's very, very quiet. Now it's quiet. Huh. Actually sounds ever so slightly like the old GE 3-speed 5-wing box fan that I have. Huh. This is really odd. It's performing a lot better than I remember it performing. It's not great at all, but it's not terrible. Especially for the amount of noise that it's not making. So we're at 0.68 amps, 60 watts, and a power factor of 0.72. And the airflow test will reveal that there's a pretty decent stream of air coming out of this fan. It's already, you can already feel how horrifically out of balance it is. In fact, the whole hub is kind of not oblong, but it's like off-centered. So the blade is just really screwed up. And I think that's just how these are. It's definitely kind of out of clock, although it's not horrifically out of clock. Slow it down a bit here so we can see. The clock isn't too bad. It's not at all what it should be, but I've seen a lot worse. Okay, so it's running on low, and you know, this actually, the performance is good enough that I would use this. I think the performance of this one is superior to that of the other one with the rotational guard. It could also be that the one with the rotational guard just isn't moving a whole lot of air because it needs to be cleaned. I'm really pleasantly surprised by how this is operating. I can still feel it all the way across the room, and it's not like gusting air everywhere, but it's very noticeable. And for the sound level, it's not bad at all. I find this very pleasant. Huh. That's really strange. I thought this... really don't recall this moving very much air since the last time I tested it. Okay, let's go to the medium. And this switch is kind of interesting because I believe it's very similar to that Medea box VM with those really skinny blades that they make today. Okay, so this is the medium, and you can probably see now how badly it's shaking. The camera cord isn't quite long enough. I mean, that's just ridiculous. It's almost comical. So now it's drawing 1.08 amps, 98 watts, and has a power factor of 0.76, which is kind of high for a shaded pole motor. And again, it's moving more air with less noise than I remembered. I really find this quite odd. I just recall this being an awful fan, and it's really not that bad. Yeah, I just spent all that time bashing the blade set, and really, other than the balance, I guess it's not quite all that bad. I still think it doesn't make a lot of sense, but maybe that computer program isn't as bad as I initially thought it was. Okay, let's go to the high, and I don't know if it'll blow over or not. Let's see. It's very close to blowing over, but I don't think it's going to. So high is 2.07 amps, so probably is rated for 2.1. The watts is 191, so it draws a lot of power. And the power factor is 0.78, which is quite high for a shaded pole. And it's gotten pretty loud now, but the airflow is pretty strong. And in fact, I'm really surprised. I think this one moves a lot more air than that one with the rotational guard moves. Of course, the balance is a joke. It is so out of balance. That's ridiculous. And, you know, it's actually kind of powerful. not bad. Well, I certainly owe that computer program and the fan itself an apology because I was mistaken by the blade. It in fact moves a very reasonable amount of air. I still don't think it's the best aerodynamic design I've ever seen, but it works. And the bearings, despite taking an absolute beating for its entire life, seem to be quite content still. And you can see just how badly out of balance the blade is. You know, for a plastic blade on a sleeve bearing motor to do what it just did, it has to be so far out of balance. This is probably one of the worst balanced blades I've ever seen in a box fan. But since it's a plastic blade fan, it's fairly easy to fix that. Just put some hot glue in the center of the hub to balance it out. Okay, that'll be it for this Holmes box fan. Over and out.